It's a little different from all these dudes. Okay, they riding waves, me, I'm up on the cruise. Yeah, you feel like me, then you got nothing to prove.
At the end of the 19th century, a handful of professors in New Jersey crafted the doctrine of inerrancy, and then adopted it as an official article in the Presbyterian Confession of Faith. This doctrine came into being in direct response to Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. What is it about Darwin's work that pushed theologians at Princeton to start referring to the Bible as perfect, inerrant, and infallible? Those professors believed that Darwin's ideas attacked the creation narrative in the Bible. In their minds, the book of Genesis very clearly and very accurately informs readers today how God created all of life. All one has to do to understand our origins completely is turn to the first page of the Bible. In Genesis 1, God created the heavens and the earth. On the first day of creation, God crafted light out of the darkness, and God saw that the light was good. The second day came around, and God separated the firmament to make space for the sky above, the waters below, and the void between. For the third day, God summoned land out of the waters and fashioned every plant and tree imaginable with God's voice. God saw this cornucopia of green and knew that it was good. On the fourth day, God hung the stars, the sun, and the moon in the sky and declared all of it to be good. The fifth day began, and God filled the sky with birds and the waters with creatures. This abundance of life was good in God's eyes. Then on the sixth day, God created animals to inhabit the land. Later that day, God created human beings of all genders at the same time and commanded them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it." And God saw that all of these breathing land dwellers were good too. And then, on the seventh day, God left a blank space on the canvas and declared the lack of productivity to be holy. The professors from yesterday believed this story holds all that one needs to know about the history, the science, and the philosophical implications of creation. And when Darwin published Origin of the Species, the professors felt threatened because it challenged everything they knew about life. While some celebrated the similarities between Darwin's work and Genesis, Princeton Theological Seminary doubled down and declared them to be mutually exclusive. According to the professors, God created the earth in 6 literal days, and to accept any other alternative understanding of life on earth was deemed to be heresy. While that may sound good, there's a major problem with this claim. And that major problem is the Bible. Because the chapter after Genesis 1 is Genesis 2. And this second chapter contains a different story about the origin of life than the first chapter. In Genesis 2, the earth, the waters, and the sky already exist. God's first action is to craft a solitary human being out of mud. After the first human is sculpted and filled with the breath of life, God places the human in a garden, and then God fabricates plants and trees out of nothing all around that human. Returning to the mud, God fashioned every animal in existence, including birds and sea creatures, at the same time, and asked the human to name each of them. Once all of the animals were named, God caused the lone human to fall asleep. God removed a rib from the human and created the second human being. This second human being was simultaneously an independent person and also an equal romantic partner for the first human being. This is the second creation story, and this story is unlike the first creation story, which means the Bible begins with 2 contradictory creation stories. Now, there are some Christians who look at these opposing creation stories and announce that Genesis 2 is a retelling of Genesis 1, but that simply is not true. To debunk the myth that Genesis 2 retells Genesis 1, 4 artists are illustrating a creation scene behind me. In the middle is a tree that can be seen by all four artists. Screens divide the artists into two groups on either side of the tree. On one side of the screen, two models pose in a symbolic recreation of Genesis 1, while on the other side of the screen, two different models pose in a symbolic recreation of Genesis 2. The common tree between all of the models represents the moment when God created vegetation upon the earth. And the four models represent the moment when God created human beings and their romantic partner.
Cause I got a different type of swagger, dude. You ain't gon' find nobody like me on your avenues. Better come get me while you can. I'm just passing through. Ask me how I get this good. Oh, you can blame it on my attitude. Yeah. Okay, baby, that's just my attitude. Yeah. I don't blame you. If I was you, I'd probably be getting mad too.
In Genesis 1, God speaks trees and flowers and Venus flytraps all into existence on the third day. 3 days later, God creates men and women and non-binary folks in abundance with one dramatic gesture. After the day gives way to night, God rests in the immaterial wealth of the Sabbath. These illustrations demonstrate a simple sequence of creation. God created trees, then several humans and their romantic partners at the same time, and then God paused and gave the gift of Sabbath.
Yeah, even Mick Jagger couldn't move like a moon, yeah. You think how it look, I'm up on the moon, yeah. Got fresh to death and it came out of the tomb. That's cause I got a different type of gratitude. Don't be sour, got my power from the Beatitudes. And we did it the long way, check out the latitude. I'm unapologetically fly, don't wonder why, that's just my attitude.
Conversely, Genesis 2 begins with God reaching into the mud and crafting a single human being in her image. From there, God places the human on land and causes trees and flowers and Venus flytraps to spring up from the ground all around the human. After some time, the only human on earth falls asleep, and God made the second human being. This creation story ends with only two people on the entire planet. Genesis 2 is not a retelling of Genesis 1. In Genesis 1, God creates trees first and then humans and all of their romantic partners together. While in Genesis 2, God creates one human, then trees, then a second human. Genesis 2 is a contradiction of Genesis 1. And the implications of this beginning to the Bible are astounding. If the Bible contradicts itself on the origin of life, then the contradiction undermines the Princeton professor's initial argument that the Bible contains a perfect scientific record of God creating the earth. Not only that, the creation contradiction suggests that the people who wrote and assembled the book of Genesis never intended for these words to be considered as an absolute and authoritative word on creation. After all, there is no logical path as to why the Bible included both creation stories in Genesis if Genesis was intended to be a literal explanation for how the earth came into being. Instead, the contradiction invites us to look beyond the text to something deeper about what it means to be human. When we can view Genesis 1 and 2 as complementary but contradicting human expressions of divine action, we realize that these competing creation stories are trying to tell us something together. Genesis isn't really sure how God created the earth, but Genesis is entirely sure that the earth is the work of God. And if we pay attention to the earth, then the earth will testify about the Creator. In other words, creation is the Bible for all humanity. Every human being in history has only ever lived in this creation. Genesis tells us that somehow, some way, that universal experience speaks volumes about the character of God. The Apostle Paul understood this. He believed that he could add very little to the testimony of creation on God's behalf. When he went to Lystra to preach to the non-religious, Paul told them that they already knew the work of God by the rain. When he wrote to the church in Rome, he told the non-religious that they were without any excuse. They knew God's character fully through the earth that God made. When Paul was invited to preach in the shadow of the Acropolis, he told the Athenians that the unknown God can be known by the creation of the world. Paul believed that creation was the Bible for those who did not study the Bible. And he never viewed those who did not study the Bible as having inferior knowledge of the character of God. Instead, Paul trusted the idea that anyone who gazed upon a mountain anywhere basically knew all that religion could teach one about God. From Genesis to Paul, Scripture testifies that creation is the Bible for all humanity. Which brings us to some bad news. The Bible for all humanity is on fire. And unless the global human society makes drastic changes, we will damage the Bible for everyone beyond repair. But there is also some hopeful news. In my lifetime, I have seen Christians demonstrate an intense reverence for the printed Bible. What might happen if billions of Christians take the reverence we have for the printed Bible and refocus that reverence toward the earth that God created? Well, that would be a monumental change that might just save creation. In 2017, the Climate Accountability Institute published the Carbon Majors database. In this work, they wanted to track who and what was the most responsible for all greenhouse gas emissions since 1988. What they found is just 100 corporations in the entire world are responsible for 71% of all greenhouse gas emissions. These corporations are mostly oil companies, and they are lighting the earth on fire. Why do Christians tolerate this? Shouldn't we be enraged that these companies are desecrating the work of God? If oil companies burned 1,000 Bibles a day to drill for oil, would Christians accept this behavior? Of course not. So why do Christians allow oil companies to set God's creation on fire? The most pressing work Christians have right now is to experience a revival that calls us back to the tradition of the Bible, to remind ourselves that we need to be less concerned with how God created the earth and to become much more concerned with caring for the earth. This may sound like a heretical idea, but when you consider the contradictions of Genesis 1 and 2 and the innovative theology of the Apostle Paul, we begin to realize that viewing the earth as Scripture is the tradition of Christianity. May we never forget that the earth is the Bible for all humanity. May we hold a deep reverence for God's creation. And may we take bold and radical action to protect the work of God right now.
Yeah, that's just my attitude. Okay, that's just my. I'm sorry, homie, I don't mean to be flawless. Yeah, I seen that envy in your eye when you saw this. Yeah, and when you shoot your shot, it make you a target. You're getting got, they wanna take all your pockets. Ooh, hey, it's a gift, I avoid all the nonsense. Yeah, don't be a hater, it's no good for your conscience. Yeah, you from this world, I'm from somewhere far beyond it. Yeah, matter of fact, man, I don't even belong here, cause I got a different type of swagger, dude. You ain't gon' find nobody like me on your avenues. Better come get me while you can, I'm just passing through. Ask me how I get this good, oh, you can blame it on my attitude. Yeah, okay, baby, that's just my attitude.